our speakers. Our first one here is Kevin Moran. Where have I got it? And I'm going to say that Kevin has many years experience. I'm not going to say how many.
Thank you.
And currently he is the Director of Recruitment at Point One Recruiting Solutions. And Kevin has been in recruiting, and you've also been in sales, a number of things. So you have some good experience that's eclectic that he's going to offer his insights to us tonight. We also have Tara, and she, you have about 15 years experience, I figured.
I shouldn't say my year. Yes, 15.
Well, Kevin
That was
doesn't,
one job.
Kevin doesn't have all of his listed, so I'm just saying many years. And so she has some, as HR director, she has some good insights for us. And then lastly, we have Anne. She is a recruiter, a staffing recruiter, and you've got 20 years experience. That's on her LinkedIn. And so we have three people with different perspectives that are going to be talking about looking for a job. And so please give ear to what they have to say, and then feel free to ask questions when it's all done. And so let's welcome our guests.
Okay, I don't know if I need this. I ended up getting my own office one time when I was too loud, talking on the phone. And it was right overlooking the river, and I have to be in the pit with everybody else. But I'll use it anyways. I really struggled with what I wanted to share tonight. And I thought they were going to go before I was, so I figured, well, they're probably going to cover it all anyways, from an interviewing standpoint. And I was a manager for over 20 years, and then got into recruiting. So I can kind of give a different look. I've hired people, and now I coach people for interviews and work with different companies. But I tore up what I was going to what I was going to say last night, and I just redid the whole thing. So I'm just going to speak, pretty much from the heart. If there's one thing that I want you to take away, one thing that you write down is, it's all about them. When you're in the interviewing process, it is all about them. It's not about you. That'll turn around, but you have to have the mindset that this is, what do I bring to the table? What do I have to offer the company that I'm interviewing for? And that's it, really. And my goal tonight is really to kind of simplify really what the hiring process is, or really what the mindset is of a hiring manager, and then how we can prepare ourselves, to really prove to them that we are the solution, and get the job, or at least get an offer that we can say yes or no to. I'm going to make probably some, pretty general statements that things that I've observed over the years, and I know there's always exceptions. But if I was to ask people, to raise your hand on who really likes to interview, and that's okay. General statement number one: no one likes to interview. Charlie, you do like to interview. All right, Charlie does. Which is an exception. I would say that, okay, most people do not like to interview. And that really includes the hiring managers. And then the general statement number two is most people really aren't good at it. And that includes the hiring managers. None of them have been trained, unless you're an HR where you've gone to school, you've been trained to do it. Myself, I was just promoted. I was promoted. I stocked shelves, and I was an assistant grocery manager, then an assistant manager, and then a couple years later I had 50 employees at a very young age, and then they told me I had to hire people. And I remember the going downstairs with my bookkeeper had said, you have an applicant, and I go down, and I didn't know what to say. So I look at the application, I And I used that one, I knew there was one thing that I knew from interviewing before, and what is that question that I asked her? So tell me about yourself. Exactly. So tell me about yourself. And which, I'm going to make another general statement. I think everybody goes to the same Google or website to get the interview questions. You know, we all use the same ones, and we can use that to our benefit if we're interviewing. But so she tells me all about herself, and then I finish up with, you know, I'm so hard up for cashiers. I'm so short-handed at the time. I think all I did was check her pulse. You know, and they say, when can you start? You know, and that was probably, you know, times have changed, I should say. You know, those days are gone. Now we have background checks, criminal checks, driver's checks, credit checks, personality profiles. You know, I can't tell you how many I've taken those in the last year, more than I have in my entire life. I question why. Why is it so hard for people to hire somebody? You know, and I go back. I think the hiring manager's number one fear, and I've done this, is making a bad hire. It's worse than not hiring somebody at all. It just wreaks havoc. But I would say probably in its simplest terms, I want to talk about hiring. So what is the hiring manager looking for? And I had 3 things until last night. Now I've got 4 things. Basically, I think the hiring manager is only looking for 4 things. And number 1, does this person have the required skills and the qualifications to do the job? Or do they have enough of them where I'm willing to train them? That would be number 1. Number 2, can I trust this person with my customers? Are they going to be really good with my customers? Number 3, will this person fit in with my company? A lot of companies invest a lot into their culture. The last thing they want is somebody that's going to mess it up. Number 4, this is the one I added. Will this person stick around? I've lost some placements to this because they think they're going to be job hoppers. They want to know that they're going to invest the time and the money into you, that you're going to stick around and you're not going to, make a move for the next shiny penny you see. And I guess really, if I could summarize it all, kind of in a nutshell, will this person make my life better? The hiring manager usually is suffering. There's usually some pain, whether it's from a customer service standpoint, or it could be sales, could be growth pains. But really, will this person make my life better? So kind of, I started thinking, okay, great, what do we do with this information? We would prepare ourselves, better than anybody else. We have to make it easy these days for hiring managers to say yes. And that means just to even interview you. First, I think you've got to take care of the basics. It's got to be the resume. It's got to be good enough. There's a lot of opinions about resumes. In fact, if you show your resume to one person, then everybody's got an opinion. But it's got to be good enough, and it's got to be specifically targeted at the job that you're applying for. If you have an objective statement, some people have them on their resume, some don't. It's got to match. It's got to line up with the job that you're interviewing for. I've had people get turned down because the objective statement said, "I want to be a manager." Well, they're applying for a sales position. The guy said, "Well, Kevin, he wants to be a manager." And I go, "Well, no, he's a great sales guy." That doesn't fly. I had another person. They said they want to be plant maintenance, and it was a field service job that travels 90% of the time. 2 totally different things. They won't get the interview. So make sure the objective statement lines up exactly with what you're the job that you're applying for, and show them that you have the skills required to do the job. Real fast in the resume. If you can do a summary, but just have it targeted specifically for what they're looking for. If you've got them somewhere in the body, but get them up to where they can see them immediately. LinkedIn, another basic. If you're a professional, you need to be on LinkedIn. I use it. I find great people on LinkedIn to talk to, and then I find people at the right time on LinkedIn. Be on LinkedIn, and somebody here had told me how I should do my LinkedIn profile, and it was basically, it needs to be your resume on steroids, you know. And that's the way I always will remember that when he said that. It was Tom. So, preparing for the interview. We know the interview questions, right? Because we all went to that same Google site or website that all the questions are. So if we know what the questions are going to be, we can prepare answers to each and every one of those questions. We should have canned answers for each question, and they don't have to be long, drawn-out answers. And then just practice them. Practice with somebody. Networking groups will practice on how to answer those. Research the company. Look at the website. I had an engineering manager go in for an interview one time. It was the first thing they said, "Hey, what did you think of our website?" And he said, "I never looked at it." Well, you might as well have just gotten on the airplane, you know, and headed back to Green Bay. Be prepared to answer, why do you want to work for GE or HP, whatever. They've all been drinking the Kool-Aid. You know, they think it's the greatest company in the world, that this is the only company, and you need to have a good answer for it. There's thousands of great companies in this country, you know. But you've got to have a good answer for them. I mean, why do you want to work for their company? And have good questions. You know, have good questions about the job. When you what I always tell when I'm coaching somebody that's going in for an interview, I say, picture yourself in the job. What would you want to know? What would you want to know? Two things you can't, I tell them, you know, you can have carte blanche. You can ask them anything, but you cannot ask about money or benefits. Those are two showstoppers. That right there tells you it's not about them anymore. It's about you. You know, what are your benefits? You're going to get all that information. You know, right now you're just trying to provide value, and you want to show them that you're thinking about the job. If you have been unemployed for a short time or a long time, you've got to be able to address that. You got to, and I let them know that you've been busy. And, you know, but you've got to be busy to let them know you can be busy. Otherwise, why? You don't want to do that. And I know what it's like to be unemployed. I know what it's like to have your world, you know, turned upside down. I know what it's like to be, you know, mentally, physically, spiritually depleted. I went through that not too long ago, and I will tell you, God really helped me out. He saved me. And a saying that really helped me during this time, and still does, is get up and show up. You know, or just show up. You know, great things happen when you just show up. Go to networking events like you are tonight. Go to meetings, take classes. Crossroads Career Network has those 2 great classes I highly recommend. They help me a lot. Volunteer. I mean, get busy. So when the hiring manager asks you, what have you been doing? You can tell them, you know, I've been really busy. In addition to searching and interviewing for jobs, I have been doing whatever it takes to be a better person, you know. So now that you've prepared yourself in the interview, it's time to differentiate yourself, and, you know, how do we show the hiring manager that we would be great with their customers, how we would fit in with their company, and that we're going to stick around, you know, besides just telling them all this in the interview. I think there's 3 things that you can do to really differentiate yourself. And number 1, your attitude. Number 2, your attitude. Number 3, your attitude. I know that some of you are hurting. It's hard, but you got to press on. And you can't let that come through in the interview, you know. Well, I'll finish up. She's kind of telling me it's my time is up, which amazing that I can actually talk this long. I would say that if you are a believer in Jesus Christ and a follower, Colossians 3:12 and 14 tell us that therefore as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. If you can do that, you know, you can be confident and humble at the same time. Some of the top people I've ever met in my industry are the most humble. That will shine through in an interview. You can do this, you know. If you have any questions, I don't know if you want questions now or later.
If there's anything for him now, I think in the moment. So is there anything that anyone would like to ask Kevin?
Since when did experience become second fiddle to degrees?
That's not with everybody.
I know it's not.
It's not with everybody. It's certain companies, and and sometimes it can come just from a department head. She may know that even better than I do. I just run into it with certain companies. They say, I've got to have an engineer. They may be charging for engineering prices. Degrees also are right now, they just want, it's a strict weed out. We've got 1,000 people. If we can cut it down to 700 or 500, you know. But if you have the experience, there's a company for it. You know, you just haven't found it yet. And
I just know when I started in this industry, no one would give me a chance because I had no experience. Now I've got 26 years experience. They won't touch me because I don't have a degree.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's challenging.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I guess how close are you to the degree? Do you have a couple of years of it, or would transfer or anything? You know,
I could probably do it in about 3 years, but I'm 54.
I know.
So
Yeah.
you know, why do it?
I would say keep searching. Keep searching. It's going to probably be one of the smaller companies.
Yeah.
You know, and they're good small companies.
Kevin's got a question for you, and I agree with those the 3 points, the 4 points that you talked about necessary to be employed. And I've been on the side of hiring people and gone through the interviews and gone through the same thing. The toughest thing that I have is that number 3, will that person fit
Yes.
the culture?
Yes.
What are some examples? I've struggled when asking the question.
Yes.
What questions can you ask to reveal whether or not they will fit
What is
in the culture, so that
Yeah.
so that now I'm on the other side and I'm interviewing.
Great question.
How do I know what to respond? Hey, how can I show that I would fit in with their
Yeah.
culture?
Well, you know what? If you're not going to fit into the culture, it's not where you want to be anyways. You know. But
Right.
what is the, you know?
I don't know.
One of the questions is what is your culture? What are the people like? What do they like to do? You know? If you're big on volunteer and big on serving, you know the company I work with, we go out every quarter and we serve in the community. You know. It says something about the owner. It says something about the company and the people. But I would ask them specifically. Just tell me.
What
In
characteristics?
fact, I wouldn't say, what is your culture? I would say, tell me about your culture. Tell me about the people. Where do they come from? What's important to you? How would I fit in?
Exactly.
You know, really, how would I fit in? You know?
You know,
What
these
can
are
I
good-
say?
These are good questions, but I think we also need to move on to the next 2. But there is going to be an opportunity to ask these questions at their table at the break time. And these are excellent questions. But let's move on and let the others speak. So Terry, whoever.
Okay, so I'm Tara. Oh, jeez. Are you awake? I guess. I'm Tara Alvarez. Sue introduced me before. I have been in HR for several years. And I'm going to talk about a roadmap to a successful interview. And there are several types of interviews nowadays. There's face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, Skype interviews, video interviews, social interviews, even speed interviewing. I could go on actually, but I won't, because they're a matter of time. But there are so many different interviews that you really want to prepare for them all. You can't. But really what I'm going to talk about tonight is the face-to-face interviewing options and ideas, but really they'll probably be relevant to any of those types of interviewing. But what I like to do is talk about the roadmap to a successful interview. I think there are 5 mile markers that you actually have to think about when you're getting ready for your interviewing. But the first one is being prepared, as Kevin was certainly talking about. But the other one is, I call them the 5 Ps, if you will, but being prepared. And then practicing. Practice, practice, practice. It makes perfect, right? We've always heard that saying. The other one is positivity. You have to be positive. Kevin also talked about that. We as interviewers can tell when you are not happy and if you're discouraged, you walk in, it shows, we can read it. So I'll talk more about that. The fourth one is post-interview. What do you do after your interview and how do you keep interested, your hiring managers, your HR professionals interested in you? And then lastly, the 5th P is prayer. Obviously, we want to certainly just pray to God and have Him help us through this challenging time. And He's always there for us. He listens to us and He knows what we need, when, and why. So the first one I want to talk about is preparation. And again, I'm just going to cover a few things because Kevin did definitely touch on some of this stuff. But research the company. It's really important that you're researching the company. Look on LinkedIn. Go on Google. Talk to as many people as you can that might know somebody that works at that company. When you come into the company and are interviewing with me, I want to know that you've researched that company. Write down your questions when you're researching so that you don't forget it. Bring that piece of paper that you wrote down your questions to the interview. Ask those while you're going through that. Know the person's name that you're actually going to be interviewing with. Use it several times. When you're actually sitting in that interview, I love it when somebody says, Tara, thanks for this interview. I appreciate your time. Tara, I really appreciate the time, at the end when they're shaking my hand. Tara, what about your company? Tell me a little bit about your culture. I like that when somebody actually uses my name and remembers who I am. I don't want them to come in and say, hi, Sally. Nice to meet you. It had to happen before, though. And then prepare for the interview questions. Go on Google and figure out what those questions are. But write them out. If you want to actually put a bulleted write up, if you will, a piece of paper, write down what those answers are to your questions so that you can bring that piece of paper to the interview. I don't have a problem with somebody sitting across from me and saying, oh wait, I actually wrote down some answers to that question and I really thought it through and I really had some good points. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about those 4 bullet points that I had written down. Sure, that means that you were prepared and you are eager to show me what you were thinking about that question. So I like that. Write down a few questions to ask the interviewer, which you talked about also, Kevin. That question about, tell me about your culture about XYZ. I want to know that you've already prepared about that. Those questions that you wrote down when you researched, bring that piece of paper with you. There's not a problem having somebody actually read their question off of a piece of paper. It just shows that you're prepared and you're interested. Some standard ones that people are always asking me, what do I ask an interviewer? So I wrote down a few of them. What do you like about working at XYZ? I get that one a lot. I think that's a great opportunity for you to get to know the company, and from the person interviewing, they'll actually tell you mostly the truth, if you will. Sometimes it is, we're drinking the Kool-Aid, so we tell you a bunch of stuff, but because we want to sell you on the job just as much as you want to sell us on you. But another one, I saw you online, you won an award. Tell me a little bit about that. What's the criteria that you had to get to win that award? That shows that you actually went online and you researched the company and you're interested and actually care about what our company is doing. What are the top 3 things that you'll expect of me when I get started? That's always an important one because I want to know that you're going to be able to do those top 3 things when you first get started. I can just send you on your way and get started on those top 3 things. What type of employee are successful at X, Y, Z? That's always a good question to ask too. I also agree, do not ask about pay. However, you do have to be prepared for that question. If they ask you what are your salary requirements, have something in mind, search it online, talk to people, what's the type of range that you might be making in that type of position, but do not ask about it. Your first interview, it's never really a good idea to ask about pay or benefits. Again, bring your written questions to the interview. Again, it's really okay. I like that. I want to see that somebody is prepared, so don't worry about bringing that. Also, bring your copies of your resumes in case that interview went really well. I want to introduce you. Oh, hey, do you have a second? I want to introduce you to the Vice President of Operations. Oh, okay. Well, now you have extra resumes that you can hand out to that Vice President of Operations. So bring copies of those. Letters of reference, certificates that are relevant to the job are always appreciated. As well as a blank piece of paper or a working pen. Can't tell you how many times people don't bring a piece of paper or a pen that doesn't even work. So that's kind of silly. But most people don't even know that you can bring a copy of the job description or the job posting. Bring that so that you can reference that when you're actually talking to the person, so that you can reference or make sure that your answers are relevant to that job posting that I had out there. Make sure that you're bringing those typed up questions and answers that you had, and also your questions that you're going to ask the interviewer, if you will. But partner with the HR person. If you are looking for a job, that best person that you can partner with is the HR, because they might fight for you. If the hiring manager interviews you and I'm not sure about that person, the HR person really likes you, you've been following up, you've been working with them, HR person will most likely go to bat for you. No, you should really give this person a chance. I've really had really good feelings about them. Please give them another chance. So try to partner with HR. So the second P is practice. Obviously, we all know we got to sit there and practice our interview questions. Once you go to Google and you figure out all of those questions, practice them in front of the mirror if you want, or practice them with a buddy. You can go to lunch and say, hey, do you mind just reviewing these questions with me? I need to say them out loud. Some typical questions, we all know, what are your 5-year plans, what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses. Make sure you have a plan. When you talk about weaknesses, a lot of people say them in a hurtful way, if you will. But don't do that. Don't be discouraged about your weaknesses. Be proud of your weaknesses. I'm actually not very good at public speaking, so that's one of my weaknesses. I want to make sure that I let them know that I have a solution to my problem or my weakness. So when I'm interviewing, I let them know I'm not good at public speaking. However, I force myself to be in public speaking at my networking events or other events. So I just make sure that they know that I'm trying to work on those weaknesses, and we appreciate that. The other thing is, the third one is positive. You have to remain positive. Of course, we've talked about that. If you go in and you're just slumped down, it doesn't sit well, and we can tell. We can read right through that. So we do kind of push that person aside and go to the next person that comes in very energetic, enthusiastic about the job that we have. So always remain positive. Greet the employers, interview cheerfully, politely. Want to make sure that as soon as you get in, I remember your smile, I remember your enthusiasm. So make sure to just drive that as soon as you get there. The other one is post-interview. So what do you do when you're done with the interview? What happens after that? You want to follow up with them. You don't want to do it too much because that's aggravating. Interviewers don't have all the time in the world, if you will, but if you follow up once a week, whether it be email or phone, not both, but one or the other, that would be fine. I think that it shows that you're eager, unless we tell you that we're not going to get back to you, or maybe 2 weeks or something. Then don't follow up until after those 2 weeks. Give us a chance to get back to you first. But otherwise, follow up once a week, that would be fine. Mail the employer a follow-up note thanking them. I always had them in my car just saying thank you. I wrote it out as soon as I was done at the interview. I put my stamp on it, and as I'm going home, I would drop it off in the mailbox. So they got it pretty much the next day. And then I always do a handwritten note because it does set you apart from the competition. And then if you're not hired by their employer, find out why. Maybe you could, listen to the HR person that you partnered with, and then they would say, this is why I think that you didn't make it to the next round. Sometimes they'll share it with you, sometimes they won't. But you can try, and why not ask if you're trying to get a job, maybe they can give you some pointers. And you can always ask yourself too, what did I do well? What did I not do well? What could I do better? Was I fully prepared? Was I as positive as I could be? Did I practice as much as I could have? Did I have those notes? The people that don't come in with the notes or being prepared or practice, again, we can tell, and we're going to move you aside, and we're going to hire that person that was fully prepared, fully practiced up, and very positive. And then the last thing is prayer. You know, you can't be discouraged. I really do believe that God has a plan for all of us. I have been through my own crossroads. In fact, I was pregnant when I was going through my crossroads, so it wasn't very fun. But I did believe in Him. I prayed every night and asked for some help and guidance, and He gave that to me, and I believe that He would do that for everybody that's looking for it. So just make sure to pray and ask for what you're looking for, and I know He will guide you in the right direction. So I like to offer now, if you guys have any questions. I'm sure I have a little bit of time left.
You're a good public speaker.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Paul. Appreciate that. It's on my box. Okay. And you're next.
Hello, everybody. We all are kind of similar, so you'll hear repeat, and maybe a little bit of repeat. Try not to. I'm a recruiter as well as Kevin, and I've been doing this for a long time. I've been on-site and off-site. I was recently at Aurora for a quick recruitment project for 3 months, helping them staff up. Right now I'm working for an engineering firm in northern Wisconsin that's looking for a logistics person. Kind of hard to find. What do you think, Kevin? Yeah. So I work, on-site, off-site. I've been, recruiters where we get the privilege of getting that firsthand kind of candid review of the candidate. And a lot of the stuff isn't something that's ever shared with you for a million reasons. But we kind of hear the raw detail of it. So I'm hoping that we can kind of give you a perspective that you might not have had before by giving you a little insight. My talk is a little bit more simple. I was trying to think of, how to compress a few thoughts as far as why companies hire certain people. And from a recruiter's perspective, it really comes down to just a couple things. They give us a job description, and it might have like 10 things they're looking for on it. I mean, realistically, most companies know they're not going to find all 10, or they can't afford the person that has all 10. Which sometimes we have to train them, right, Kevin? Right. You can't afford them. So anyway, so our job is to try and find someone that has 6 or 7 of the 10 and is in their price range. Skills matter. You have to match those skills that they're looking for. Those 10 skills are listed. You've got to have some of them. We got to see that you have these skills. You have to have something to bring to the table. You have to match something. You have to fill a need for them. You have to add value immediately. You're a cost. You cost money. So if I'm going to spend this much money on you, you've got to add value to me right away. Kind of like what Kevin was saying. It's about them. It's totally about them. What can you do right now to make us better? What are you going to do? How can you add value? To me, these guys didn't mention it as much, but to me, from a recruiter standpoint, and when I'm talking to hiring managers and companies, pay is really, really big deal. Pay range, being in the pay range, is probably one of the most important things. And I know that sounds really unfair, but it is. If the job I'm working on, the mid-range is 70K, and you're at 85, but you're the perfect candidate, you're too high. You're too expensive. Now they might bring you in for an interview, and you don't know this, but you're probably candidate B already because you're expensive. They might bring you in because they think, well, if we really like him, we can maybe create a requisition, or maybe there's someone that's going to move on and we can fit him in there, but you're too expensive, and you don't always know that. If my pay scale is, let's say the mid-range again is 70, and you're at 40, well, that tells me as a recruiter or hiring manager that you're too light, that you haven't had enough depth of experience yet. And we don't like to talk about pay. It's not fun on the application. It's obviously on there because it's important. It's not fun when us recruiters ask you right away what your pay is, what your range is. But we have to know that because, unfortunately, that is a huge factor in whether or not we're going to hire you or bring you in. It's kind of a weed out thing, like you were saying about education. Pay is really important. And it's not something you can necessarily control, but just be aware of the fact that it is a big part of the decision process. And then the last thing I think that when companies are looking at someone, it's how you'll mesh with the team. I know we talk about it, it's kind of a soft thing. It's hard to really specifically talk about, but you get a feeling, and us recruiters, we're kind of sensory. We can kind of get a feeling from people by talking to them on the phone. You know, when you talk to enough people over a long period of time, you kind of can tell who's lying and who's not. You can tell if someone's positive or not, like Tara was saying. You can tell someone's in a bad spot or they're desperate. You can tell that stuff. But people hire people like themselves. So you want to try and mesh and replicate the person that's interviewing you as much as you can. That's my best tip. You know, you're going into Harley. I used to work for Harley as a preferred vendor, and they have a specific, you know, type of person they look for. And a lot of my candidates were flown in, and I didn't necessarily meet them in person beforehand. It's really hard to tell if someone's going to mesh with Harley. You know, that's a specific type of company that looks for I can't talk, sorry. I'm not good at public speaking either, Darren. We're recruiters. We can talk on the phone all day long. But anyway, you know, they're looking for a certain type of person. And it's really hard to find out who that is, but try and replicate the person you're interviewing with as much as possible because they do look for a team person. So how do we market ourselves? Thinking about these things that companies, you know, think about when they're hiring or looking for a candidate. I agree with you guys 100%. The resume has to be so clear that your skills match this job. I don't ever want to see a resume that isn't geared for the job I'm sending you for. Because it's got to be so clear and so obvious that a first-year recruiter would see that your resume and know that you're perfect, and a CEO that has 3 seconds would look at it and say, perfect candidate, let's bring him in. It's got to be so obvious, and you know what that looks like, because you know the job. You have to have stories and examples in your interview process that you can throw out immediately. It's proof. It's proof to me that you have that depth of experience. Tell us about a problem you solved. Tell us about a client. Tell us about how you developed a product. Tell us about all those things that apply. Give us a story. Give us proof. You have to have that prepared. You got to show your value and how you will make us better immediately. You know, when we talk about meshing, I think one of the keys is to find an internal referral. If you have 5 companies you're targeting, 3 of them you know someone at, I would work on those 3. When I was just at Aurora, and if we had a nurse call us or email us and say, hey, my friend just applied for that nursing job. I used to work with her at Wheaton. She wants to come over to Aurora, work at St. Luke's. You know, done. I mean, you could almost skip the first part of the interview process. If we have another nurse that has worked with this person referring another nurse, that's so powerful. An internal referral is so powerful. So if you're one of several candidates and your skills are similar, you're in the pay range, you fit in the slot, but one of the candidates has an internal referral, someone that has kind of given that soft information that us recruiters can't always tell, the part that tells us how you mesh with the company, that person's going to win out. Because if someone can come in and say, hey, I used to work with this person, they're really great to work with. They work well on a team. They're really good at getting their job done. They stay focused. What a nice person. So fun. Love working with this person. We had a great time working together. That's the person that wins out. Because in the end, we all want to work with someone who's fun and low maintenance and easy to work with. And you can't tell that soft stuff in an interview, but an internal referral, someone that'll walk it in to the manager and say, hey, I worked with this person, or they're my neighbor, and they're great. That's really powerful. And it is who you know. It really is. I don't know, I hope that was something additional. Anybody have any questions for me, or would you rather just talk to the panel and can share? Yes?
You said that pay range was really important, but then why don't companies list the pay range that they're looking for?
It's because, unfortunately, we're trying to figure out what type of people that we can get maybe outside of our range, normally on the lower end. I'm telling you the truth, it's unfortunate, But a lot of companies don't have a lot of money right now, and we're trying to pack in as many people as possible to get the job done. On one side of the spectrum, obviously, sometimes we're trying to get as many people to do 10 jobs instead of one job nowadays. But we're trying to figure out what we can get for the least amount of money. That's the truth.
And it's usually a range. It's usually like, 60 to 75 or 60 to 80, and then they want to hire ideally at 70 or below. It's usually kind of broad so that they can grab that person that might have more experience or get lucky with someone that hasn't switched jobs or hasn't had a lot of increases. And it is tricky. Unfortunately, it's something no one wants to talk about, but it's a weed out factor like education. I mean, it's one of those quick things, if you're over the range, they won't consider you, but unfortunately you're at your home thinking that you said something wrong in the interview and it's not you. It's just a weed out factor. It's about them, like Kevin said perfectly. So it's just a way to
And the other
screen
time,
out.
if we do post that range, we might miss somebody. If they see their range at, $60,000 to $70,000, and somebody's like, oh shoot, I've only been making $40,000, but they'd be a great candidate, maybe they won't go after that job, and that would be a perfect candidate. So I think sometimes we feel that it might scare the great candidates away, and so we just don't post it.
Plus they can't, because if there's a person in the same job sitting next to this job at 59, it creates a lot of internal turmoil. It's a private thing.
That inside referral, if you know somebody at the company you want to work for, do I send the HR person my application or my resume as well as that person I know
yeah.
and say, hey, I just shot my resume off and...
I would definitely go through HR. I would go through the normal channels that they've listed for how to apply. A lot of it's online. And then I would ask that person, give them a copy of your resume and ask them, maybe even have coffee with them, say how interested you are in this company. Will you go in and tell them about me? Will you go in and tell them the stuff that they can't read on the resume, about how, and remind them. Because some people need cues. Say, hey, can you tell them about how we worked together and how we solved a lot of those problems in that team project we worked on? Can you tell them about how how fun I am to work with? Say it, and see if they'll walk in, because it's really powerful if they walk in afterward, they have you on the pile, and they say, hey, this person right here, I've worked with this person before, they're really sharp, they're really great to work with. They'll pull you to the top of the pile. They really will, because it saves the human resource person a lot of headache if they already know that you're great to work with and you're trustworthy and you're kind and you're a team player. It saves them a lot of that anxiety about bringing in someone that they've never met and they have no idea any history. So it's a really nice thing, internal referrals.
You mentioned the factor of being liked.
Mm-hmm.
If you're making 40 and you apply for a job that's making 65, could you delve into what makes that person liked? Because my experience has been that person at 40 usually has a PhD, or hungry and driven. Versus the person who's at 65 has the I've arrived and don't you know how important. So the person at 40 wants to climb the ladder in all manners, not just financially. How do you differentiate somebody who's at 40 and they may have hit the Peter principle, bam, that's all the further they're going to go, or they're only making 40, but geez, this is a rock star. How do you differentiate?
Like Tara said, sometimes you can find that person that, and I think sometimes because they're in a company where they've been at the whole time and they just haven't gotten the jumping jobs pay increases, that they do end up being in a lower range for their skill set, if you know what I mean. So it's like they just haven't gotten the increases. They work for a company that hasn't been able to give increases, and they're kind of there. So sometimes, someone like Tara gets a lucky, candidate, and they can offer them a nice increase, and they're really excited, and it's a great thing. That's the ideal situation. But from a recruiter standpoint, and before we've met anybody or had a chance to talk to this person, when we're talking about why a company selects someone as a candidate, I was just speaking of it as like a weed out factor more than I was about like after you've interviewed him and gotten to talk with them about their skills and what they've done. I'm talking about how when we're looking at someone's profile, we've never seen them. We're just looking at who they are, their resume, their application, that's a weed out factor. If you're too high or too low, that can be something where they say, okay, you know, this person most likely is light in experience because they're not in the range.
Okay, so what do I do if I'm making $40,000 a year? You're recruiting for your logistics manager out in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah, he's
And I'm paying $100,000. How do I impress you as a recruiter? I can do that job. Even though I'm only making 40 now, what do I say in a cover letter or a resume to impress you to say, I'm worth the leap? Because I've got all the experience. I mean, is there anything a guy or a girl can do to impress a recruiter?
It's those 5 Ps, number 1. So you gotta have that great resume to get in the door. You have to have those 5 Ps and be prepared, you know, have those documents sitting out. And that's gonna set you apart. I don't care how much money you make. That makes you set apart from the rest of the candidates. If the $100,000 guy doesn't bring anything in, I'm gonna look at you that's making $40,000. And I don't care that you say that you're making $40,000, but my range is $80,000 to $100,000. I'm still going to pay you appropriately for the market and the industry, but at the same point, you have to set yourself apart, and that's the type of stuff that sets interviewers, or interviewees for me, the interviewer apart, is being prepared and having all that stuff written out and professional.
Thank you.
It's tricky. It's just one of those things I wanted to bring up tonight because from my perspective as a recruiter, it's not a subject that we like to talk about or HR likes to talk about. Everybody, you know, it's not, because it's sticky.
We should have a whole session on pay.
You know what I mean? It's sticky, but it's like this gentleman here that is probably overqualified for anything, you know what I mean, and could add so much value, but yet he doesn't have this BSEE or he doesn't have this degree, and it's because of that they're not interviewing him because they have never met him. They haven't even seen him yet. They haven't even brought him in to say, oh my gosh, this guy's perfect. But he's getting screened out. And I was just trying to explain that salary is a screen out factor for a lot of firms, like especially these firms that are huge, and a lot of the applicant tracking systems go through a computer, you know, and it just happens automatically. It's not even something that a person can adjust because you're already screened out.
Truly, where you're just a number.
Unfortunately, with the bigger firms, yes, because they have to, because they get way too many resumes. There isn't someone that can sit there and read through them as a full-time job. I think I would agree 100% with Tara, but I think to prove to me that you have been paid less than you should be, or you're under market value, I would talk a lot about what you've done and have a lot of proof, project proof, success proof stories. I'd be heavy on that. I'd come in with, you know, diagrams of things you've done. I've launched this product, I've launched that product, blah, blah, blah. Unfortunately, I worked for a small company that couldn't give raises. I think I am under the market value. I would say it.
Can I add to that too? And tell me if you agree that you could list key accomplishments right on the resume if you were trying to make that leap.
Oh, yeah.
5,000. If you have key accomplishments from your past job, an HR person might say, I came into a small firm and I took the recruiting process from 15 days to 4. That kind of stuff is really going to help you.
Numbers, facts, percentages, it's all very powerful. Success numbers. Yes.
Hi. I have a question related to pay scale as well.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
I opened the box.
I have another section. How do you, if you're re-entering the marketplace or changing careers, how do you answer that salary question? Because you're willing to take something a lot less because you're kind of reestablishing yourself. Mm-hmm. So when you say it's really negotiable or flexible, even though they ask you your past salary, what would be maybe a better response?
It's really hard because a lot of those applications that you do online require a number. So you can't write in words like market or things like that that would show that you're flexible. You know, if you're someone from California moving to Wisconsin, you know, I mean, it's true. Even Illinois, Chicago, my candidates from Chicago to Wisconsin, the difference in pay is substantial. And that can weed you out because they're just afraid that you're not going to be happy taking less money. And it's true. They are afraid to hire someone that's, you know, to say, even though I know you're willing to, if you don't, it's just hard to.
I was just going to say, if you're doing it in an interview, if you're in an interview and somebody asked you that question, I would say I'm very interested. I'm sure you have a range for this job, and any offer would be reasonable. Any reasonable offer would be acceptable.
You're being honest and saying, I'm looking for a new start, and I realize that, you know, I'm going to have to adjust my pay because I'm switching careers. I mean, I think that is perfect. I mean, if you're,
Any reasonable offer
if you
would
get
be
to the
acceptable.
interview and you can say that, you're fine. It's just the weed out stuff that
Because you can always say no to the offer. When it comes, oh man, that's really low. You know, and then ask for a little bit more. You know, if they decide to, and companies will try to lowball some. I mean,
Half
not
the time we
everybody.
lowball because we expect negotiation. So don't be afraid to negotiate your pay or your benefits, vacation, all that kind of stuff, your telecommuting, expenses. So yeah, I want you to pay for my phone. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But you never know. You know, that stuff is
So do
all
a sign-on
negotiable.
bonus or something creative too.
But another couple of things, if we do have a couple seconds left, is just if you have a number in mind that is the lowest that you can absolutely accept, then that might be, if you have to put a number on your interview or your resume or questionnaire when you're online, then you can actually put that number in there. So let's say, you know, I'm not going to go any less than 40,000. I did a little bit of research, salary.com. I know it's a terrible website for HR people, but you know, salary.com shows that for that type of position, it's roughly a minimum of 40,000. Then put, and that's acceptable to you, then put that number in there. At least you won't get weeded out. But at the same point, you know that you're not going to go any lower than you can go personally. And just because you put $40,000 on there doesn't mean that's what we're going to offer you. So just keep that in mind too.
Let's give them all a hand. I appreciate you bringing up some of the hardest stuff. This is lively.